All right, so I got a lot of comments and messages on the last video I did, and a lot of people were saying like, hey, you really ought to do something like that, more frequently. And in specific, Nate had said, yeah, you should call it like Shop Talk Saturday or something like that. And I'm not opposed to doing a video occasionally. I don't know that I want to promise it'll be with any great regularity. I have no desire to be like a YouTube personality or anything like that, but if it helps to talk through some stuff quick or gets the point across better, then I'm not opposed to it. So yeah, in any case, for anybody that's interested, I have a really good deer hunting story that was part of yesterday's fiasco that I'll tell quickly at the end if anybody wants to stick around for that. So the one thing I was thinking about talking through quickly is fuel mixture ratios. It's one of the things that just never goes away, and part of that is because the page is growing and growing and growing, so we're constantly getting new users and new people that haven't heard me talk about this before. But for those of you that don't know, I advocate 40 to 1. And there's a lot of people that will question, like, why? Well, my steel dealer says 50 to 1, or my owner's manual says 50 to 1, or, I've been using 50 to 1 for 35 years and, it's perfectly fine. Great. Do whatever you want. But as a guy that sees the inside of hundreds of different units, arguably more than the average dealer does, right? Most dealers don't get to this point. At this point, they're going to tell you, hey, buy something new. So I'm also, as I have previously mentioned, I'm not in bed with the EPA. And so what I'm trying to encourage you to do is what is best for your equipment, not necessarily what they are regulated and forced to meet from an emissions stance. And I've even had a guy tell me before, oh, you don't know more than the engineers. Not saying that I do. But I'll tell you two quick stories that I have heard or been a part of. There's a story that's floating around about, I think it was the 041 or the 042, one of the two, doesn't matter. But anyhow, the story goes, a guy was talking to his local steel rep about, how come you guys don't make the 041 anymore? That was the best saw that you guys have ever made. And his answer was, because it lasts a lifetime and we don't sell any more saws. And I think that's something that's very relevant to think through and kind of understand why that's important. I'll give you one other quick story and then we'll talk about that. When I worked for John Deere, I worked with a lot of experimental equipment, and one of the things we got asked all the time was to bring back the 4020 tractor because it was legendary, it ran forever, it never broke. And our answer at John Deere was always no way. Because if we sold you a 4020 tractor and it lasted you forever, you're not going to buy more tractors. I want you to buy a tractor every couple of years so that we continue to make money off of you, not a one and done thing. And so those two stories combined, I think, starts to highlight the idea of why 40 to 1. Why 40 to 1? Because it gives more lubrication to all of the critical components that that your saw needs to last a long time. Does it do it at the expense of slightly dirty emissions? Sure, because I guess we're gonna, create massive global warming and rid the planet of human life by running chainsaws. So you have to understand that when a company like Steel is selling millions of units, they have to comply with EPA regulations, and part of that is hitting 50 to 1 for cleaner air standards. If you could actually get someone to tell you their true feelings on their true unregulated feelings on it, they would tell you that 40 to 1 would be a much better option. There's a lot of people that are still running 32-to-1. That's also perfectly fine. I think the one thing you guys really have to make sure is that whatever fuel ratio you are going to run, you need to make sure that your carburetor is tuned to it, because it does change the jetting or the fuel mixture going through the carburetor, and thus how it is making power, tuning, and actually how hot that mixture is when it's burning. The other thing I think is interesting is I hear a lot of people talk about how that you want that extra lubrication for your piston and the cylinder, and that's absolutely true. I do. I want you to take care of your top end. That's obviously where the horsepower is made, and if you're getting it ported, that's where the expensive part just happened. But really and truly, the other part of it that I think most people don't get is I'm far more concerned with you taking care of your bottom end. If we get to the point where you've smoked a bottom end, that's a whole lot more labor. That's a much more serious repair, and your bill is going to be far more expensive. And so understand that when a charge enters the intake, the first thing it does is go down into the crankcase itself, and that's what's providing the lubrication to your crank bearings, your crank rod, and then it works itself up via the transfers and the piston walls, both, to lubricate the top end. And so what I get concerned about, like I'll take this saw in specific just because I happen to be looking at it, and this saw has not ran for a while, so it's not fair to pick on it, but if you would look down in this right now, the crankcase itself is bone dry, and I would much prefer to see a film still showing down in there, and that's one of the things you'll see very typically if you're running 50-to-1 is that you just don't have any additional lubrication down there, and so that's really critical. It's one of the reasons I really like Red Armor. You pull one of those saws apart, you look down in there, and there's just a red sheen on everything, which tells me it's getting more than adequate lubrication. So what is 40-to-1? That's the other big question I get asked all the time, okay? So it's 3.2 ounces of oil per gallon of gas. To put that in somewhat simpler terms, if you want, if you're running a 5-gallon gas can, you can put the same amount of oil in to 4 gallons if you're currently running 50-to-1, okay? And that would get your ratio down to 40-to-1. If you're running a 2.5-gallon can, cut it down to 2 gallons of fuel, and the same amount of oil that you were using, and that would get you 40-to-1. Otherwise, it's 3.2 ounces per gallon, gets you 40-to-1. You can also buy bottles that are pre-measured that way. I picked this up at the hardware store just to show you guys. This is a mixed needle. It was a couple bucks. You can draw out the exact amount if you want. A lot of guys use the mix right fuel ratio cups or whatever if you're really having a difficult time. But in any case, that's why we talk about 40-to-1 and its importance is the amount of lubrication that it's adding to all the critical wear components. Is it going to foul plugs out faster? No, it's not. That's old talk. You're not fouling plugs any faster with a good, clean, FD-rated oil. Years ago, when you were running straight non-detergent, 30-weight motor oil and stuff, which they legitimately used to do, you would foul plugs. But you can go run something 40-to-1 now, and it doesn't produce any smoke at all. So fouling is not an issue. Even still, I would almost laugh at the idea of fouling plugs. So what? So you spend a couple bucks a year on a replacement plug if you're legitimately fouling them out? Cost of doing business, guys. I'd much rather foul a plug than burn up a $400 stock top end or a much more expensive ported top end. So anyhow, that argument's out for me too. So there really is no reason why you shouldn't be running at least 40-to-1. I also don't know of any power equipment that really struggle at just switching to 40-to-1. You probably don't even need to retune your carburetors at 40-to-1. You can just mix it and run it. And as I tell everybody, I would run that in anything small engine two-stroke. So your weed whackers, your blowers, your snow blowers, hedge trimmers, anything that you're running that is small engine two-stroke, I would have a 40-to-1 ratio in. So anyhow, that's that. Deer hunting. Yesterday I took a quick walk at lunchtime, thinking that I would just enjoy a few minutes out while it was a nice day. Our season for regular gun ends Sunday, and my buddy and his son were coming out that afternoon to hunt and try and get his son his first year. And so I knew I had a couple areas that I didn't want to get into, so that I didn't, affect their hunting later that day. But we had this little 7-acre parcel that goes alongside of a 2-lane county highway or county road, whatever, out here. And so I decided I'd go walk that. And as I was walking it, I found a set of fresh tracks. We had a little bit of snow here the other day, and I could tell they were fresh. They were still nice and sharp yet, hadn't been melted off by the sun or anything. And so I kind of knew there was a deer in there at some point, but didn't know when. And in the course of walking, I hear this truck coming down the road. And as it's going, there's a loud bang. Kind of sounds like the tailgate flopped open on it or something. But anyhow, it just, it keeps going and nothing. And I don't think anything of it. Anyhow, I get to the end of pushing that timber, and I get out to where we've got kind of a path mowed along the road, and it squirts me out kind of midway out. And for whatever reason, I decide to stop and turn and look behind me. And when I did, I see a doe laying alongside the road. And it occurs to me that I wonder if that sound I heard was the deer trying to flee the timber and got hit by the truck. And I thought, no way. There's no way. So I went and checked her, and yep, she was still jiggly and plenty warm, and had just been walloped on the head. And I thought, oh my God, I just got a deer without even firing a gun. And so I called the local DNR, and they came out and gave me a salvage tag for it. And tomorrow after the birthday party, I'll get her processed up. But anyhow, you couldn't replicate that again in a million years, and I thought it was hilarious. It was kind of a crappy demise for the poor deer, and I feel bad for the guy that hit the deer, but he didn't even stop, didn't even slow his roll. He just kept going, so I guess he didn't care. But anyway, that was my deer hunting story for yesterday. So I am one more in the freezer. And then my buddy's son took a nice buck out here yesterday afternoon too. So his very first deer, his very first buck. So that was cool. It was an interesting day of deer hunting around here. So anyhow, that's all I got. Like I said, maybe we'll continue this. We'll see how it goes. If nothing else, you guys have a good rest of your day, and a Merry Christmas. And yeah, thanks for being here. We'll see you.